Hello, my friends, and welcome to another exciting week in space. I am your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell, Blind Stallion Space Wizard. You can find me at campwizardcamp.com, Camp Wizard Camp on the YouTube. I don't know. I started a podcast. This is now a podcast because I figured why not? You can look for This Week in Space with three exclamation points on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. I don't really know how this works. I'm figuring it out as I go. So if there's a podcast platform that you would like to hear it on, I don't know, drop a note in the comments and I'll figure out how to make that work if I can. This is a weekly astro weather forecast that I like to bring. I record it every Monday. I'm taking a little break from Instagram. Maybe I'll come back there. I don't know. Right now, I'm just loving my freedom and loving being present in the world as much as one can in these fast-paced modern times. So, I do this on YouTube and now I guess a podcast every week on Mondays, and we talk about the astrology of the week, the coming astro weather, to help you know how to navigate the week in space with some grace and a little style, knowing how to, if it's going to be raining, you want to bring an umbrella, right? If it's going to be sunny, you want to bring a tank top. And so that's kind of how we try and lay this out to help support you dealing with the shifts and vicissitudes of the astral weather. And also, I find that this is a really good way to engage with astrology and, to learn a little bit more about the archetypes of the planets, their energies, and to come into a better relationship with them as they relate to each other and as they relate to us. So, before I get into the nitty gritty of the astrology for the week, I want to let everybody know that I am teaching a class on the seven traditional planets with the brilliant alchemist and artist and author Marlena Seven Bremner. And this class will be kicking off on March the 1st. It is an 8-week class where we go over each of the traditional planets, starting with Saturn, ending up with the moon. And each week we will do a deep dive into the themes, archetypes, mythologies, alchemy, and magical practices associated with each of the seven traditional planets. And then by the eighth week, on the eighth week, we will have integration class where we sort of bring it all together and talk about how we can have like sustaining practices and continued work with the archetypes of the planets. So if you're interested in that, you can go to marlena7bremner.com. I'll drop a link in the show notes about that. And again, that class will be kicking off on March the 1st. So, yeah, if you're interested in deepening your relationship with the planetary energies, check it out. It's going to be a blast. Also, I am going to be speaking at Astro Fest in LA. This will be, I believe, the last weekend in April. I think it's the 25th through the 27th of April. And that looks like it's going to be a great lineup. I'm doing a talk on astrology and parts work like IFS. And the ways that those sort of systems can mesh together and how we can come into a deeper relationship with our planetary parts. So if you're in the LA area or you want to go to a pretty awesome astrology conference, check that out. I'll drop the link to get tickets in the show notes. I can't remember the URL off the top of my head. But yeah, that's all the advertisements that I have. Now let's dive into the astrology of the week, shall we? We're talking about This Week in Space for February the 3rd. 2025 through February the 9th of 2025. So starting off Monday the 3rd, we have Mercury in Aquarius trining Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter retrograde, by the by. This is going down at 11 degrees and 16 arc minutes of these air signs. So, first thing, right? Through November and December, we were experiencing the opposition between Jupiter in Gemini, and Mercury, who is the ruler or dispositor of Gemini. Now, Jupiter is in detriment in this mutable air sign. Jupiter loves Sagittarius, which is across the zodiac, but Jupiter finds themselves in Mercury's airy home of Gemini. So they're having a little bit of an issue. And then through November and December, Jupiter was in this tense oppositional aspect with Mercury, which Mercury retrograded around that time. So we got these three oppositions, which one of the ways that I've been viewing and experiencing Jupiter and Gemini is a lot of like splitting and disintegration, right? A lot of like possibility or opportunity, and also like a lot of different opinions that are kind of bubbling up and overflowing in some ways. And I think that's been really difficult. We've, seen a lot of like splintering in systems, right? Jupiter is about coherence. It is about, spirituality and philosophy and education and legal systems and like the things that kind of bring a cohering structure to society. And as Jupiter has been moving through Gemini, I think that we've seen a lot of like fragmentation in these cohering bodies and these societal structures, for better or for worse, right? And one of the things about astrology is it's like, oh, maybe that's good, maybe that's not good. Oh, this sucks right now, but maybe this will unfold in a interesting or more beneficial way in the future, right? So I try and reserve judgment on good or bad, but it also can feel kind of grimy, right? We can also acknowledge like this feels grimy in the present. And I think during the Mercury Jupiter oppositions, that's when Luigi Mangione was in the news. That's when we had drones over New Jersey. We had just like tons of information, right? Memes flying in left and right, pew, 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 right? And it got a little overwhelming. And I found myself being like, I'm not actually going to believe anything anymore unless I can touch it with my hand, which I don't know if that's like the proper response. But I just felt this like sense of overwhelm because it was like legit too much information. Right now we are getting a more harmonious aspect, right? Trine is a supportive, harmonious, free flowing aspect, right? And Jupiter is slowing down and will station direct the next day on Tuesday, the 4th. And we'll talk about that in a minute, right? And so, we're getting like as Jupiter is slowing down, stationing, about to turn direct, we're getting this harmonious relationship between Jupiter and the ruler of Gemini, the dispositor, right? Mercury, right? So, you know, uh, Mercury, right, is information, right? It is how we process information. It is how we make sense of things. It is sort of, how we make connections, right? And Jupiter is sort of tying this all into a bigger narrative. Oh, this means this, right? Mercury is like, these things are happening. And Jupiter's like, cool, this means this, right? So I can move forward in this way, knowing that this is the narrative, the story that I am telling, right? That I'm believing in, that is cohering the world for me, right? And I think, again, like this has been sort of difficult for Jupiter to manage because they've been in detriment, they've been in retrograde, they're getting kind of a sense of overwhelm. So every time Jupiter's like, this is what it means, it's like, oh, but wait, there's some like, but it could mean this, but it could be that, right? And that can feel a little overwhelming. Right. With all these differing opinions and divergent ideas, right? That kind of like pulls things apart. So with this trine, there's an opportunity to heal some of that split, right? Perhaps in the world, but I think it's a lot easier to start with ourselves right here, right now, right? And to think about how do we like hold the tension of the opposites, which is a very Gemini thing. And I think that is one of the keys of Gemini, right? This tension of the opposites. And how do we sit with both things? Right? How do we practice both and thinking or integrative thinking instead of being like, it's got to be this or it's got to be that, right? This person has to believe what I believe or they're my enemy, right? Or I need to be all in or I'm a sellout, right? Or like I'm not down for the cause, right? And I think what this does is it separates us. It separates us from ourselves. It separates us from each other, and we are communal and social beings. right? We need each other. We can't really do much on our own, turns out, right? Despite, some of the mythology of the rugged individualist, like we can't do anything on our own, and any sort of invention or movement forward of humanity or the individual has come by standing on the achievements of everything that has come before us, right? And so, with this trine from Mercury to Jupiter, we get this opportunity to practice like holding the opposites, right? We get the opportunity to not be in the zero no or the 100 fuck yes, pardon my language, right? But the in between, in the middle space, right? Because if we're always waiting for that, like it's got to be full on, right? Those opportunities are not all the time, right? Or if we're like it can't be because it's not perfect, right? That cuts us off from a lot of things. And so being able to hold, differing opinions, right? Holding that people might have ideas that are separate from ours or different than ours, right? And this is, we can practice this through dialogue and discussion, right? With each other, with ourselves, right? Being able to check in with ourselves. Right. And maybe we don't do this through topics that are super emotionally charged, but we can practice through allowing ourselves to be curious, which is a very mercurial thing, right? Curiosity is one of Mercury's superpowers. Jupiter wants to know, and they really want things to make sense and to make meaning, right? And to fit into the narrative that we have already. This is how the world works, right? But the other skill that Jupiter brings is optimism and expansion. So we can practice expanding our curiosity, right? And our desire to know. Jupiter can help bring an element of sort of optimism, right? That like it's okay, right? It's going to be okay. And one of the things that I found just I'm traveling around it. What's interesting traveling, right? Getting outside of one's world bubble, right? Into a bigger world bubble and meeting a lot of people and having conversations. And we meet people with differing ideas, right? Some ideas that I'm like, I don't like that, right? That offends me. However, right, being in positions where I'm like, do I need to say that? Does this person or me or anyone benefit by me like telling somebody how they should think or how they should believe or how they're wrong, right? Because they don't believe the way that I do. And what is that like in that interaction? What do I lose, right? Because if I stay curious, right? If I, because I don't have to be in those topics, right? I don't have to be like, this is why you're not as good as me because you don't think the way that I do, right? I don't have to go there. I can go to other places in an interaction and be curious and find connection and find interest, and that's been a very interesting practice for me to engage in, right? Because as we are traveling, and I think that the planets function in this way also, right? As planets are moving through the zodiac, they end up in places where they are not at home, right? Like Jupiter is not at home in Gemini and needs to be creative and adapt to the situation so that they can have their needs met, right? And if Jupiter is like, no, Gemini, you need to believe this way, or Mercury, like, you need to believe this way, it's not going to work, right? Jupiter is not going to be able to be resourced if they are telling the information gatherers in Gemini that they need to come up with a coherent narrative and it's got to fit in with the way that Jupiter thinks. Like it just doesn't fly. Right. And so, Jupiter gets to practice this curiosity. Whoa, what is that like for you? Right. What does make you happy? If you hate all of these things, what does make you happy? How do you want to feel? Right. I think that these are kind of interesting questions to ask to ourselves and to ask to each other as we come into relationship with each other because we are relational beings, right? And and I think that this idea of like expanding our curiosity is really beneficial with this trying to Mercury, right? And I think that Jupiter also can help bring an element of depth to the situation, right? Because again, Jupiter is like, expanding our awareness, expanding our knowledge, expanding our wisdom, right? And then that's one of the keys to Jupiter is wisdom. And I think of wisdom as a deep embodied knowing, right? Mercury in Aquarius is very observational. right? They're like kind of up here being like, that's a thing, that's a thing, that's a thing, right? And Jupiter helps to like embody that knowledge and turn it into wisdom, right? And so when we bring this observational and analytical quality together with the depth that Jupiter offers, some really powerful things can happen. And so last week, I talked about the myth of Ganymede, which is the star myth associated with Aquarius. And this is where Mercury is, and this is why I'm bringing this up. Right. And just a recap, Ganymede is a beautiful youth who was abducted by Jupiter, Zeus, and brought up to Olympus to be the cupbearer to the gods. Right. And Ganymede's father, Tros, is really upset by losing his son. And so Zeus, Jupiter, has Hermes, Mercury, bring Tros some magical horses that are so fast that they can run over water. Right? We talked about this last week. Um, but I think that this is, really a good image for Aquarius and something to sit with, right? And the image of these horses that are so fast that they run over water, right, is something that prevents Tros from feeling the depths of his emotion at losing his son. He's like, oh, I've got these cool horses, right? And if we think about water as having depth, right, and water as a element associated with the emotion, right? If we are moving so fast that we can't sort of go below the surface, right? We're not able to kind of feel the depth of our feelings, right? It might feel good, but we don't sort of get in there. And so I was talking to my friend Jeff the other day, and we were discussing technology and the internet, and he brought up, this idea that he has about the quality of the internet being like very surface. There is a surface quality to the internet, right? And I think that this is really legit, and I think that this sort of really fits in with the Tros and Ganymede myth. Right, of just being able to run over the surface on these fast, fiber optic horses, right? We don't have to go deep. We don't have to go in, right? We can skip on the surface of social media, on YouTube, on Google sponsored AI results for various queries and questions, right? And we never have to like go deep, right? And if we do go deep, we like spiral down rabbit holes that are funneled by an algorithm, right? You may have found me through that today, right? But we don't necessarily have to go deep within ourselves, right? And so there is this quality, right, to range far and wide, right? But we might sacrifice depth. We might just be kept on the surface through the speed of these horses, through the speed of our high speed internet connections, right? And the ability to go anywhere in the world that we want to, right? And zoom right in, but, click on a bunch of links. But do we actually like get the depth of what it feels like to be there or to connect with other people? Right? Or to actually connect with ourselves, right? And so there's something in this about the ability to go slow and to go deep, right? And to gain actual embodied wisdom versus having a lot of facts and a lot of information. And I think that this trine between Jupiter and Mercury, as they come into this supportive relationship, offers us the ability to sort of take the information, right, and to allow it to sink in, right, to not just like run over the surface, but to allow it to sink in and to think about how we transform the bits and bytes of information that we gather into a sense of embodied wisdom and a bigger, more expansive worldview. So also Monday, February the 3rd, we have Mars retrograde in Cancer, trine Chiron in Aries at 19 degrees and 35 arc minutes of these cardinal signs. Again, trine is a supportive aspect. So Monday we have like some support going on. We got some harmony, we got a free flow, we got some ease, which is nice. And we have ease between some challenging things, right? Jupiter is maybe having a hard time in Gemini, but is getting some support from the ruler of that sign, right? Mars is retrograde in their fall. Chiron is a tender place in the chart, but they are in a harmonious relationship, right? And so let's see what can unfold from this today, right? So Mars is still retrograde and in fall. And now they've come into this like supportive aspect with Chiron, who is known as the wounded healer, right? So with Mars and Cancer, we can have all this kind of like armoring, right? The crab shell, right? Hiding behind the shell, right? Or striking out with the crab claw, like get away from me, right? can be all this like kind of sideways motion, right? Mars in Cancer tends to like approach things from the side, not like head on. And Mars is a direct dude, right? Mars is like, this is what it is. But in Cancer, they're like, I don't know, right? And that can be really challenging both for Mars and people who get like hit from the side, right? And we also have Mars in retrograde engaging in a retreat, right? Or turning inward. And Mars comes into this harmonious aspect with Chiron, right? And so we might get some ideas about what is being protected or defended, right? What is the vulnerable center underneath that like hard crab shell that is hiding behind that crab claw, right? We get to peek at the vulnerable underbelly or the inside of the crab, that which is usually armored and protected. This may be our desires. This may be our appetites, right? Our martial like will, the thing that we are driving after, the thing that we, are willing to suffer for, is something that Mars kind of owns, right? And, these things can be shamed or suppressed, right? Our desires and appetites, we can learn that these are not okay, right? These are places that we might have been hurt in the past, right? Places where we were shamed or denied or rejected. And so this is an opportunity for us to notice these tender places and to open to them. We don't necessarily like need to open that crab shell to the world, but we can open to these tender places where we're like, oh, that is something that I like, right? And I'm afraid of that, right? Or that is something that I want to go after, but people told me I couldn't, right? And that hurt. And that sucks, right? And there's this desire with Mars and Cancer to like protect and defend, right? Protecting like our people, right? Protecting ourselves, protecting our vulnerabilities, right? And there are ways that we can are there ways that we can create just a little bit of space in ourselves to turn towards these places and to open to these places that we like are usually armored and want to be defended, right? Not to cut off or cut down, not to like grip on or obsess about, right? That's the crab claw right there. It's just like, right? Not to like armor up or defend and be like, no, right? Thou shalt not pass. There's a time for that. But, with this aspect, I think this is a time to just be soft, to allow a little space for these parts that have been hurt or wounded, right? Just to have their voice, and to just see if we can turn towards them instead of cutting them off. No, that's wrong. That's bad. You can't do that. Or cutting into ourselves for wanting what we want, right? And I think Chiron and Aries can bring up these feelings of core shame, right? Right? I am not all right, or it is not all right. Um, Chiron is in a sign ruled by Mars in Aries, right? With Mars in Cancer, we can practice loving ourselves fiercely, right? And Aries is the sign that is about like, this is what I want. This is the fire that I'm starting, right? This is what is pulling me into action, pulling me towards the quest. And with Chiron there, it's like, oh, but that's bad. I couldn't do that. I can't do that, right? That'll hurt me. I'll be hurt. Right? And so, I think with Mars again in Cancer, learning to that fierce love for ourselves, right? To kind of support ourselves as we, move out of that shell into this quest, right? Instead of replicating the people who hurt us by rejecting ourselves, right? Oh, I can't do that, right? That might be like an adult's voice or a teacher's voice or a parent's voice that cuts us down, right? And we've learned to like take that and cut ourselves down so that they don't have to do it anymore. Cancer nurtures and supports. It's like this tide pool that brews the primordial soup of life. And tide pools need some defenses. They have like jagged rocks around to protect against looky-loos and predators and dogs who are like sniffling around in there, right? But once we are inside, there's space for life to develop and unfold, right? So how can we create and defend these spaces where we can allow ourselves to develop and we can nurture and love ourselves as we grow into who we can be, right? Who we are meant to be, who we desire to be. And I think part of that is like, pushing back a little bit and creating a little bit of space to just honor that part of us that's like, ow, right? And to like protect and nurture them. not in a stifling, smothering way, but in a way that it's like, yeah, you're all right, you know, and like, okay, this desire, right? This sense of will, this appetite is okay. We can do that, right? We can orient to that just a little bit, right? And see how that feels. Right. We don't have to take any big steps today, right? And again, this is a Monday, right? It's rainy here. We're not doing anything big, right? We're just kind of opening to what might be possible, and opening to, I think, what is calling out within us. Okay, so Tuesday, February the 4th, we have Venus entering Aries. Venus is in detriment in Aries, right? So they have a harder time getting their needs met, right? This is a Mars ruled sign, right? Venus is at home in Libra, which is across the zodiac from Aries. And so now they are moving through Aries, and they are sort of at a loss, right? Venus is warm and moist by nature, and Aries is hot and dry, right? So Venus is always like, oh, my skin feels bad, right? I need to moisturize, you know. Um, so Venus is moved out of the of Pisces, the sign of their exaltation, right? And in Pisces, they were raised up, right? They were the honored guests there. They were appreciated, and the things that Venus was into was appreciated by the population of Pisces. Now they've moved into Aries, which is a place where Venus is very far from their home and they need a lot of moisturizer. And Aries doesn't have any of that. They have like gun oil, right? And weaponry. And Venus is like, oh, this is so gross. And so they move a little slower here. And they have a harder time finding resources to support them. Right. This is not necessarily bad. And I think that like detriment and fall planets like get a bad rap because it's like, ooh, this is bad. Right. But I think what happens with planets in detriment and fall, and we'll use Venus and Aries as an example, is it helps them to be creative in order to find the resources that they need. Right. And this can be incredibly helpful because we can get lazy when things come easy. Right. And again, like with trines that we're experiencing on Monday, these are easy, harmonious aspects. So they don't require a lot of work. Right. So they're a place for integration. They're a place for like, right, oh, things come easy. Like this doesn't suck. And these places are really important. It's important to be in places where it's easy to access resources. Right. Where we are able to have our needs met with little struggle, right? However, when we can just order anything on the internet to our house, we never need to go out and get anything. And if we never go out and get anything, then we never get to meet new, interesting, cool people, right? And our lives can stay very small because, like, we are just in this recursive loop of having our needs met without having to like hunt and gather, without having to engage in challenge, right? And it's the challenge that forces us to grow. It creates friction, which creates heat, which moves things along, right? And so when we are far from home, we need to kind of adapt to our situations and our surroundings. And this is what a planet in detriment is doing. And this is what Venus will be doing in Aries, right? And so when we don't have access to the things we are used to, we need to get creative and use what we've got to make things work, right? So an example from my personal life, I'm traveling right now, and my practice has had to shift and adapt. Right. I need people's Wi-Fi codes. I need, like, I don't have my books with me. Right. I'm not doing my radio show right now because like I don't have the space for that. I don't have my background, right? But I get to kind of explore all these other interesting situations. I get to meet new people. I get sort of filled up by interactions and people that I don't have access to in my normal environment, right? And so things that I may not have done or thought about doing, being in my home where I have all of my resources, right? I have access to everything just at my disposal, right? And so, for example, one thing that has kind of emerged for me on the road is starting a drawing practice. And this is a Venusian thing, right? Venus deals with creativity, Right. And so I need to use whatever resources are available to me at the places that I'm staying because I don't have all of my art supplies that I would normally use. Right. And so if I was home right now, I might not even start doing this practice because like it's like, yeah, whatever, but being a place far from home, I'm sort of like motivated to be doing this, right? It's that distance and this sort of discomfort that creates a challenge and activates a level of creativity, right? And it helps us to think in different ways so that we can get things done and get our needs met in new and creative ways. And so this is something that we can access as Venus moves into Aries. And like, yeah, it might need moisturizer, but it also might find like new and cool and interesting ways of developing ways of keeping their skin soft and glowing. Right. They might have to work a little harder, but they might innovate something really creative as a solution to this. And so, also, I just want to note that now that Venus has moved into Aries, they move closer to their retrograde station, which will occur on March 1st. And this is happening at 10 degrees and 5 arc minutes of Aries. And as Venus moves into Aries, we can begin to observe the sort of vibe shift and the places where things around love, creativity, beauty, as well as our social lives and values begin to shift a little bit. And we may be called to access creativity and ingenuity to get our needs met in all of these areas of our lives. Right. And we can also remember that some of these solutions will need to be rethought and reworked over the coming months as Venus stations retrograde and goes back over this ground and goes back into Pisces, stations direct, and then moves back over it one more time. Right. So we are sort of like figuring things out. We are trying creative solutions, and then things are going to shift, and we're like, okay, this is what I'm working with, right? How does this feel? How does this align with my values? Is this what I like? Is this not what I like? And then that will be sort of reworked one more time as we're like, oh, this is what I like. This is what is pulling me towards beauty and creativity. This is in alignment of my values, and this is not, right? So just be open to that. Leave a little space for that. Okay, moving right along. How's everybody doing out there? Y'all like sticking with me? You picking up what I'm laying down? All right. So, also on whatever day this is, Tuesday, February the 4th, that is tomorrow, we have Jupiter stationing direct at 11 degrees and 16 arc minutes of Gemini. Hmm. Oh, yeah. Also, before we get into Jupiter stationing direct, just pay attention as we are moving towards this retrograde, Venus's retrograde. Pay attention to the areas in your chart that are ruled by Aries and Pisces. Right. So what houses Aries and Pisces fall in your chart? Because this might this retrograde is going to affect those areas of life. And so we might need to get creative in some of these places. We might be reworking some of the themes in some of these areas of life. We are going to be like redoing and rethinking and reorienting our value system and what we like and what we don't like in these areas of our lives. So, just pay attention to that as we start moving towards this Venus retrograde, which is kind of a big thing. And we'll talk about that more as we move closer to the 1st of March. So, anyway, tomorrow, February the 4th, Jupiter stationing direct at 11 degrees and 16 arc minutes of the mutable air sign of Gemini, where Jupiter, again, in detriment. Yeah, we're talking a lot about like detriment and rulership and space today, which is cool. I like this. I think that these are important topics. So Jupiter has been retrograde since October the 9th, and they stay of 2024 last year. They stationed retrograde at 21 degrees and 20 arc minutes of Gemini. So they've moved backward 10 degrees through the mutable Mercury ruled air sign of Gemini. So when a planet is retrograde, it can be turning inward, right? And that's sort of like outward drive, right? Or with Jupiter, the outward expansion kind of gets turned inward, right? And, again, Jupiter having a difficult time in Gemini. So it's maybe like taking in a lot of things, right? And like to think about like what inner expansion looks like, right? What does it look like as we have been like practicing an inner expansion? And so as Jupiter stations direct, it can create this sort of movement from what was developing and expanding in our inner worlds up and out into the external world. Also retrogrades are thought to be a little unpredictable, right? And so there may be parts of our lives or bodies or psyches that we didn't expect uh to expand, right? That might be have been growing since October, right? Things might have been shifting that we were not intending or looking at. These might just be the circumstances that we find ourselves in, like some unexpected expansion. And so it's interesting to look back since the fall, right? Since October, which feels like an entire lifetime ago at this point, and consider the wisdom that has been developing since early October and whatever internal growth has occurred, right? So just tracking back in our minds. And I think it's important to note also that internal growth is really uncomfortable, right? Expanding parts of our internal world can be really challenging and scary. There's a lot of like difficult shadow material that can come up as we turn inward and begin creating change and pushing for more expansion or creating more space, right? There's parts that really like how it is, right? They like the structure, they feel comfortable, even if it's not healthy. And as we start clearing things out and making more space, right, turning inward and being like, oh, I got to sit with this, these parts can feel threatened, right? They can feel scared, they can get angry, right? We start moving stuck energy around, it can feel really threatened or frightened. And I think part of the benefit of Jupiter retrograde, right, and this internal expansion is being able to shift some of this stuck energy inside of us. And so, as we shift some of the stuck energy or the things that we are clinging to, or the old ideas, right? And I think the retrograde is also like reworking old stories or old belief systems or old narratives. It's got to be this way. This is how it is. And meanwhile, Jupiter's getting bombarded with all this information from Gemini, and they're like, no, it's got to be this way. This is how it is. This is how my dad did it. This is how I'm doing it, right? This is how it's always been done. Right? And this may have caused us to ask, what is the story that I'm living out, right? Whose story is this? And to really like go inward and be like, what is the story that is authentic to me, right? And being able to sort of integrate some of that information in Gemini, right? So that we can shift some of this stuck energy in our internal system or intergenerational family system, right? So that we can show up in bigger ways in the world, right? Jupiter is expansion. And so you can look and see what house in your chart Gemini falls in, because we might notice some of the energy shifting around this area of life in the coming weeks. And to really think about, okay, what are the lessons? What is the narrative shift that has been happening, right? What are the places that I have expanded within me that I can now begin bringing out into the world and putting into practice in the world? So Thursday, February the 6th, we have the North Node conjunct Neptune in Pisces at 28 degrees and 9 arc minutes of the mutable water sign of the fishes. This is a Jupiter ruled sign, by the by. So we talked about this last week, right? Because we had Venus all up in the mix. Venus was conjunct the North Node, I believe, on Saturday, and it was conjunct Neptune the same day or right around then. And now the North Node and Neptune have come to meet, and this is occurring again Thursday, February the 6th, right? So we have the North Node, Rahu, the dragon's head, right, who's consuming and consuming and consuming, right? It's just entered into Pisces, right? Rahu is this place that we hunger, right? We don't know that we're full because Rahu is just a head with a mouth and no body, right? So it doesn't have a belly and doesn't know when it's full. So it just is like taking in and consuming, right? It's a place of increase, right? And Rahu pulls us deeper in. Conjunct Neptune, right? This creates an increase in some Neptunian themes, idealization, right? Increase in the dream or the vision, a bigger dream, right? Or following, being pulled into the dream, pulled into a vision, or pulled into illusion. Right? Can also like be an increase or a hunger for salvation and redemption. These are Neptunian themes, right? And also maybe an increase in the dissolving qualities of Neptune, right? And so, you know, Neptune is a planet that's associated with illusion and delusion, right? This sort of glamour. Rahu, the North Node, is also connected with ideas of illusion, right? It is a trickster that pulls us into incarnation, right? It is samsara. It's like really the trick of the light is the dance of Maya, the illusion of reality. It tricks us into this game, right? Into this dance of life in samsara, right? Into this world that we are living in, this world of illusion, right? And this is Maya's dance, is the dance of illusion. Rahu is like, come on in, come on down, right? Step right up, right? Take a turn on the wheel. Take a turn on the wheel of samsara. Right? Only 2 bits. Come on, bring the little lady. Right? That's Rahu, who's just like, pulling us in, right? Carnival barking us into samsara, into this world of illusion. However, it's through engaging in this world of illusion, in this world of sickness, suffering, and death that we are able to see healing and transformation. It like brings us onto the path, right? This is the place, right? In this carnival, we find what we need to heal and to grow. So with Rahu and Neptune, there can be this increase in illusion and delusion, but this can also be in the service of something bigger. This can help us to wake up from the dream, or at least it can help us to move towards the healing and awakening by recognizing how faulty this world of illusion that we are living in is, right? And again, Maya is the goddess of illusion in the Hindu and then Buddhist pantheon, right? And I've heard it said that Maya is the engine of samsara, right? Tricking us into believing that happiness is just right around the corner, right? This is also a Rahu thing, right? Pulling us deeper in. Oh, it's just there, right? If I get this, or like if that person loves me, or if I get all these followers, or if I wear this, right? If I do this, then I'll be happy. And if only then I will, right? If only then I will. That is Rahu kind of pulling us into this world of illusion, the hunger of the North Node pulling us into experience, right? The trick of the light of samsara telling us that we consume, we will be more happy, right? If there's something else that will fulfill this empty space in us. However, I've also heard it said that Maya is in the service of our awakening, that the illusion of our world frustrates us into asking the right questions. It frustrates us into awakening. Why am I not happy? I thought that if I could just do this, then I would be happy, and I'm not. Why? Right? If that thing that I was told would bring me happiness doesn't, what can bring me happiness? And is happiness even possible? And it is, right? At least that's what they say, right? But it's not found in the illusion of the world, right? Not found in this flawed world in samsara. It is found through awakening, right? And the frustration of this world of illusion is what activates this questioning, right? And that brings about awakening. So again, Neptune can function as the longing to be rescued from this world of suffering and illusion, but can also function as our awareness of the awakened state that we carry within us. The awareness that we live in a magical world, that we are connected to the divine, right? That we are living in this divine tapestry, and that we are divine beings, we are divine threads moving through this tapestry, right? And we're having this human experience in order to grow. And one of the sort of Buddhist koans is, how do you enter a room that you were already in? And kind of sit with that one for a while, right? Right. It may be through the desire for something other, right? That is never satisfying, that we are able to wake up a little bit, right? By being like, oh, like I wish I was in a different room, right? Oh, I hate this room. And, as we just come into a sense of presence, maybe we can awaken a little bit to like, oh, but maybe I'm already here and maybe it's okay. Right? Allows us to sort of wake up a little bit to this moment right here and right now, and to come into a deeper sense of presence, not about what we lack or what we need, but what we already have and what is actually eternal. So, moving on to Friday, February the 7th, we have Venus in Aries sextile Plutus. We have Venus in Aries sextile Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees and 15 arc minutes. Right. So Venus just entered into Aries, the sign of their detriment, where they have to be more creative around how they can access resources. We talked about this. And now they come into contact with Pluto, underworld deity that deals with initiation, death, rebirth, transformation, right? The unconscious, the shadow, themes of power and obsession, right? Fortunately, Venus is making a sextile, which is a supportive aspect. This might help us to gain access to some of our personal power through our values, right? What we like and what we don't like, what we love and what we're not into. Right? Knowing what these things are and how that feels in the body and in our lives provides a lot of power. Oh, I don't like this. That's not what I want. There's power there. Ooh, I do like this. This is what I want. There is power there. However, I think a lot of the times we're like, I like that, but I can't have that. Oh, and we push that down, right? And we give our power away. Or we're like, oh, I don't like that, but I have to do it, right? And again, that is disempowering, right? So for example, right, if you're like constantly going to parties with people that you don't like, or you don't like the music, or you're like in spaces where you're like, I'm not actually into this, but I have to be here for work or because I need these people to like me, right? um uh it's like that is like sucking our power away, right? Or if we're eating food, or dealing with people or doing work that we don't like, right? Or if we're always engaging in people pleasing and doing things for others, this is all disempowering, right? We're abandoning ourselves and we're letting go of our power. When we're able to do things that we like, that we are able to, and we are able to say yes to our desires, to what makes us feel good, that is really empowering. And this is like a full yes, fuck yes, right? Not a like, yeah, but I can't, right? And I think a lot of times we swallow that desire, right? And we give up our power, right? We are ashamed of what we desire, of what we like, of what we want, of what we are calling in, right? And we give up our power. Right? And I think saying yes to what we like and what makes us feel good is a way of choosing ourselves, and a way of choosing life, and a way of saying yes to life. We can't always have what we want, right? This is not how the world works, right? This is not how samsara goes, right? However, we can make choices that lead to pleasure and joy, and that lead us into personal power, not in a hedonistic way, right? In the like, oh, I just want to feel good all the time, right? But in a way that if we center our desire and center what feels good, that provides access to power and personal power. Again, this isn't about like checking out or running away or escaping. I think a lot of times like pleasure and feeling good gets sort of lumped in with checking out, right? I'm talking about like tapping in, like getting closer to the self through what feels good, right? What lights us up, what makes us feel alive. And this is about being more present, more embodied. Right? This body is a vehicle through which the soul experiences life. And what feels good provides really valuable information, right, around what is right for us. And thinking about how we can be more present in our experiences, we center beauty and love and joy, and how we can say no to the things that rob us of these life-giving qualities, right? And again, we can't say no to everything, right? Just like we can't say yes to everything. But I think that this Venus sextile to Pluto is helping us to really think about like, where is the power of our yes, and where is the power of our no? And as we tap into that, how does that build our sense of personal power, right? Pluto and Venus can also provide access to some deep emotions, right? Connections might feel more powerful today. Relationships might have a depth or intensity to them. They also might provide an opening into the unconscious or personal or collective underworld. It's a good time to sit with the emotions that arise and to notice what we are feeling and how these feeling states give us access to deeper parts of the self. and or can help us to feel into the sense of power, right? So something to think about on Friday, right, which is Venus's day. So also Friday, February the 7th, we have the Sun in Aquarius sextile Chiron in Aries. This is happening at 19 degrees and 44 arc minutes of Aquarius and Aries. So Mercury is coming out of Mercury is coming into a conjunction of the Sun. This is happening Saturday at 20 degrees and 59 arc minutes of Aquarius. So, about 1 degree away the next day. And on the way, both Mercury and the Sun are going to sextile Chiron and Aries. And so if you remember back to Monday at the way back when at the beginning of this tirade, right? We had Mars trine Chiron, right? We had a supportive aspect between Mars and Chiron. Now we have Mercury and the Sun in supportive sextile aspects, right? So we're getting a lot of like wounded healer action this week, and a lot of supportive aspects to the kind of teacher within us, right, as well as the wound within us. And so, now we have Mercury and the Sun coming into these supportive aspects, right? So the Sun illuminates and Mercury makes connections and communicates, right? The Sun with Chiron helps us to understand how the wound may help us to know who we really are. It's the wounded places that give us access to our ability to heal ourselves and to help others. Carolyn Casey, who's one of my favorite astrologers, said on some recording that I listened to that always stuck with me that she wanted to do away with the word trauma and replace it with the phrase "my beautiful, dangerous mission." Right? Replacing trauma with the phrase "my beautiful, dangerous mission," which I love, right? Because that's really what it is, right? It's the places that we were wounded, places that we are hurt, the spots within us that are like really grimy, right? These point the way to what we need to do to heal, right? And that is our beautiful, dangerous mission. And as we learn to heal these places, right, and to navigate these grimy spaces, we learn to help others to do the same thing, right? We can share our wisdom and knowledge with other people who are also on the path. And so we know, as we know the way, we can lead others. Right? This also helps us to have a better sense of who we are, right? To know our limitations and what we need to do to feel okay and safe in our bodies and in the world. Right. So Chiron was also the teacher of heroes, and the Sun is a heroic dude, right? The Sun is like, I am the hero, right? I am a golden god, right? And it is like really like the heroic part of ourselves. This is my mission in life. This is what I am aspiring to, right? The Sun spurs us into our personal hero's journey. It is what shines light on the path and asks us to engage in the quest of living, which, spoiler alert, you are engaged in the quest of living just by being here, right? This is a quest. This is a hero's journey. Each day we get to be in a hero's journey, right? It doesn't have to be this long sort of story arc that takes an entire lifetime. Like every day we get to say yes to the hero's journey just by being like, cool, I'm gonna go to the store. That is a serious hero's journey to go get milk, right? Just something to remember, right? And that the Sun, right, which is like, this is what I long for. This is how I need to express myself, like pushes us onto this quest, right? Pushes us into the hero's journey. And part of the hero's journey is the quest into the unknown, right? To face challenges and shadows and ordeals so that we can access this elixir of life and bring it back to the known world to help our communities and our kin, right? This is the Sun and Chiron facing the challenge and the ordeal, right? Right. It is the Sun sort of meeting up with Chiron and recognizing, oh, this hurts, right? This sucks. I don't like this. I'm scared. I feel bad, right? And it is the heroic act to be like, cool, I'm gonna do something about that. Right. That is the ordeal, is facing that pain and that wounding. And the quest is to be like, cool, like what can I do about that? How do I heal this? Right. What work can I do around this? Right. And this challenge provides access to the elixir of life, right? That as we work through it, right? As we work on our anxiety about going to the supermarket, right? or our scarcity mentality about going to the supermarket or whatever, right? That's just a tiny hero's journey, but you know what I'm saying, right? As we are like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it anyway, right? And what are the things that help me to do this? Oh, that becomes the elixir of life. That then we take that and we can offer to somebody else, oh, hey, like when I had to go to the supermarket and I really didn't want to, I brought this like cool object with me that helped me out, right? Or I pulled a tarot card that like helped me to navigate this space, whatever, but being able to share that with others like helps us to share that elixir of life with the known world. And this is the hero's journey, and this is what the sun Chiron sort of offers us. And Chiron teaches us to be heroic by facing these small wounded grimy places, right? So Saturday, February the 8th, Mercury in Aquarius, sextile Chiron in Aries at 19 degrees and 45 minutes. And again, just like I'm saying, the sun came into that sextile and then Mercury is following, right? Mercury comes into the sextile with Chiron. It might help us to understand what's actually going on, right? I just said a bunch of words and, you might feel these things, right, on Saturday, right, a little earlier in the day. And then by kind of midday, Mercury hits it and you're like, oh, wait, that's what he was talking about, right? And Mercury helps us to make connections and to get insight into the ways that experiences provide clues to our healing process, right? This might give us some clarity on the medicine that Chiron offers us and how this process might make us more ourselves, right? And help us to be of service to others. Again, Mercury and the Sun in Aquarius can be a bit detached, right? Which can be really helpful because Chiron might can be in a victim role, right? Chiron is like really holding on to their suffering. I don't want to go to the store. I hate it, right? And Mercury and the Sun can be like, big picture, far off. Like it's cool, bro. It doesn't really matter, right? They can be emotionally detached to this like wound, right? Instead of like clinging to the suffering, right? Chiron can yeah, Chiron like wants to like wallow, right? And hold on to the wound and cling to the suffering, right? And with the kind of observational detachment of Aquarius, we can get that observer perspective, right? And observe what's going on and not get sucked into it, not get sucked into the story, not get sucked into the wound, right? From this observational perspective, we can actually see what's happening in a new way and without getting caught up in the story, right? Or in a victim narrative or in a narrative about suffering or in a story about I can't or it doesn't work. We can just see what the situation is and how that might lead us to the medicine or to the healing process, right? Or to the milk in the grocery store. And you know what I'm saying? Right? Which might actually be the medicine. Right? And we can see how we can move from this wounded place of suffering into a place of deeper authenticity. Or we can shift from the victim to the hero, right? And I think distance allows us to do that because we're like, oh, victim is not so far from the hero. When we're up in victim, we're like, no, I can never, it won't work. No. Right. So we kind of need that Aquarian distance. It's like, okay, whatever. It's just like right there, you know? And the victim and the hero might just be two sides of the same coin. We might just need a little bit of distance to help us feel not so emotionally charged or emotionally attached, right? So that we can make new connections. And we can shift the narrative that we are telling ourselves. Because when we get some distance, we're able to observe how the pieces fit together in different ways. And this is the gift of Aquarius, right? And we can begin to thinking about things in new ways, right? And thinking about how the story could be told differently. And again, I think this is one of the gifts of the Aquarian outsider or rebel is that distance, that detached view, right? That allows us to be like, oh, if we just did it like this, then that could be differently. Or if we just moved over here, or if we just shifted this a little bit, right? Or we just flipped the coin, instead of being a suffering victim, right, we can be the hero of this story. And so just something to consider as we move into this weekend. And then Saturday, February the 9th. Is this all happening Saturday? Yeah, Friday, sorry. Friday, the sun sextiles Chiron. Saturday, Mercury sextiles Chiron. And then a little after that, on Saturday, February 9th, Mercury in Aquarius conjunct the sun in Aquarius at 20 degrees and 59 minutes after both of these sort of like go through this wounded place. So we have Mercury coming in to make their superior conjunction to the sun. This means that Mercury is moving faster than the sun, right? After the conjunction, they begin being visible after the sun, right? So they are kind of moving faster than the sun. The sun will set, and Mercury will be setting behind it, right? Mercury is then going to be moving towards their point of greatest elongation, which is the furthest that Mercury can possibly be from the sun. And once Mercury reaches this point, they will station retrograde and return to the sun. This occurs on March 15th when Mercury is at 9 degrees and 35 minutes of Aries, and the sun will be back in Pisces at that point. So all this week leading up to the conjunction, Mercury is what is called under the beams, right? Which is sort of obscured by the light of the sun. And as they move closer and closer and closer to the center, they are what's called combust, right? So burned up by the power of the sun, right? This means that Mercury has been invisible and their power is being weakened, right? As they are combust, like I said, they are burnt up in the sun. And this might create situations where there's been confusion, or we might feel like we're not being heard or couldn't get our thoughts across, right? As Mercury comes into this superior conjunction, it is a moment of new life, of Mercury being reborn. They're beginning a new journey as they speed up and pass the sun and sort of go out in front, right? And they are leading the way, right? Before they had some autonomy in the early morning, right? Because they were rising before the sun. And now, as they are moving faster, they will begin moving into a place where Mercury can do what it wants after the sun sets. So we're moving from sort of a day Mercury to a night Mercury, which is sort of interesting, right? We can think about the thoughts that we have in the morning as we're just waking up versus the thoughts that we're having in the evening when we're just going to bed. And these, like this alone time, there's a different quality of thoughts. One is more reflective, I think, and one is more kind of aspirational. Um, so Mercury will still be under the beams for a little while and be hidden and weakened until they gain enough speed to get a little distance and gain a sense of self, right? An agency, an autonomy, and begin developing their ideas away from the power of the sun, right? Now they are hidden in the sun's light and developing these new ideas and carrying them out into the world, sort of paving the way for the sun, right? But it's like these things aren't seen yet, right? They're still hidden. They're still like kind of washed out, right? If you think about like having a light in your eyes and you can't really see what's going on, right? It's too bright and things get obscured, right? But there's the ability to kind of develop things in anonymity or invisibility, right? That then kind of emerge a little bit later. Okay. And I like this idea of Mercury kind of like the messenger kind of leading the way, this god of the crossroads leading the way and guiding the sun, right? Clearing the path, right? And for now, a new seed is being planted. A new seed, and a new idea is being initiated in the heart of the sun that Mercury will carry out into the world and communicate. What is the message that you want to bring into the world now? What do you want to say? What is a new idea that you've been sort of like developing? And maybe we don't know this, right? Because this is going to kick off this weekend, right? And there can be like these moments of clarity that we get with the conjunction. Oh, this is what's right. Oh, this is what I need to do. Oh, wow, that all makes sense now, right? So again, on our theme of leaving space this week, right? Leave a little space for things to be illuminated, right? For the internal voice, that small, quiet voice to be heard, right? So we can't get the message if we're not listening. So again, make some time and some space, turn down the volume to tune in and hear the word, whatever that looks like for you. Okay. Last transit of the week, also occurring on Saturday, February the 9th. We have Mars retrograde in Cancer, trining Saturn in Pisces. This is going down at 18 degrees and 22 arc minutes of those signs, those water signs. So Mars and Saturn can be a little antagonistic to each other, right? Mars is like the gas, right? I want to go, 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 do, right? Saturn is the brake. No, stop, stop. cut it out, turn it down. But the supportive aspect like a trine, they can work really well together, right? Gas and brake work really well together if we know how to use them, right? So Saturn helps to direct the Mars energy towards the greater goal, right? Saturn provides structure for Mars's energy to be directed towards the achievements or the consequences that we would like to have, right? Saturn can bring some patience to the usually impulsive Mars and can help us to do difficult work in the service of the long term goal, right? Mars is like, I'm doing this now because this is what I want. Saturn's like, I'm doing this over a long period of time because this is where I want to be, right? And so Saturn sort of enlists that like martial energy towards the bigger and more long term achievements, right? This is a good time to do difficult work, right? A good time to focus the fire of Mars. This is a good time to do things that require sustained effort or even attention to details, right? This is maybe not, probably not work that will provide a lot of external reward or validation because Saturn's not really about that, right? But it's work that needs to get done. So Saturn helps us to like really harness and direct Mars. However, because Mars is retrograde, they might not have a lot of motivation at this moment. And we want to make sure that the pressure of Saturn doesn't smother the fire of Mars, right? So be gentle with yourself. Right? Be gentle, right? Saturn, we can think about Saturn as making like a good fire pit to like hold the fire of Mars and not like putting on too much stuff, right? You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, right? And smothering that fire because Mars is like a little vulnerable, a little tender, a little retrograde, not like as outgoing, right? And so I think another theme of this week is right being gentle with ourselves, right? All of these aspects to Chiron in these wounded places, right? You know, Mars in Cancer coming into relationship with Chiron, coming into relationship with Saturn, Venus with Pluto, right? We want we want to be thinking about the ways that we can be tending our fires and helping them to grow bright, not being demanding of them. These are sensitive and volatile times. We need to be kind to ourselves as we navigate the world this week. And with that, my friends, I'm going to get up out of here. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. Yeah, that's all the astro weather that is fit to print. What do I want to say? Yeah, again, I have a class coming up with the brilliant and talented Marlena Seven Bremner. I'll put a link in the show notes. It is an astrology class. Well, it's more than an astrology class. I don't want to limit it by saying that, but it's on the archetypes of the seven traditional planets and ways that we can work with them in our lives and getting to know them and coming into deeper relationship with them. And we're looking at these planetary bodies and archetypes through mythology, psychology, alchemy, and magic, as well as astrology. If you're interested in that, it kicks off March the 1st, and it's an 8-week class. We'll be doing a deep dive into each of the planets every week, and then there's an eighth class for integration. Also, I will be at Astro Fest in LA at the end of April. Check that out. There's a great lineup of speakers, and the people who put it together are fantastic, and I'm super excited for it. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes. Also, this is a podcast now, maybe. I think you can find it on Apple and Spotify. It's This Week in Space with 3 exclamation points, not to be confused with This Week in Space with no exclamation points, which I think is an astronomy podcast. Anyway, yeah, look for it, look for me. And yeah, if you want to get all your astro weather without having to look at me, you can do it that way. So maybe I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. Maybe I'll be back on Instagram someday, but for right now, I'm really loving my freewheeling, traveling lifestyle, untethered to an algorithm. So, to all my Instagram friends, I miss you and I love you. And I'm still here and I'm still doing this, cranking it out each and every week to help you figure out how to navigate the trials and tribulations with some style and grace. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I am your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell, the Blind Stallion Space Wizard. And this is This Week in Space. And I will catch you next time. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and may the force be with you. Bye now.